Thank you. In general, the questions raised by Ms. Po Lee San and Carrie Tan deal with the role of women in the national defense of Singapore. Similar issues were raised during the debate in this House on the White Paper on Singapore's women's development, and my reply today will address the general theme as well as specific queries. The proposal to enlist women into national service is not new. In fact, it was debated as early as 1967 when national service was first introduced into this House. It was during the NS Amendment Bill. To the then Member of Parliament from Tiong Bahru, Mr. Lee Teck Him, Dr. Goh Keng Swee replied that we had not reached the stage where mandating national service for women was necessary. The government's position on conscription of women into military service remains today. But it's important to state clearly why we hold to this position so that this House and Singaporeans understand how we have sustained a strong support for national service and built up a credible SAF. The principal considerations which go to the heart of Ms. Carrie Tan's questions. That men, but not women, were mandatorily enlisted when national service began, had less to do with gender equality than the pressing need to quickly build up a military to defend Singapore. The British had announced in 1967 that they would pull out all forces from Singapore by April of 1971, and that precipitated a live challenge. An SAF had to be built from scratch and expeditiously because there were clear and present dangers that threatened our very existence as a fledgling nation. Dr. Goh and his officials and the SAF pioneers' first preference was actually not national service, conscription, but an army formed by regulars, men and women. Because they did not want to deal with the potential problems of national service, turning civilians into soldiers, equity, defaulters, deserters, training, injuries, and even deaths among them. But a regular army would not have been sufficient to protect Singapore. So NS was started, and this House passed the Enlistment Act subsequently in 1970. The Enlistment Act, to effect national service, as it was originally drafted and stands, allow for both males and females to be enlisted. The precise clause, a person subject to this act, means a person who is a citizen of Singapore or a permanent resident thereof. It does not exclude women. In fact, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew wrote in his memoirs, From Third World to First, quote, "I was keen to have our women do national service as Israeli women did, because that would reinforce the people's will to defend themselves. But Keng Swee did not want his new ministry to carry this extra burden, as the other ministers in DEFCO, meaning Defense Council, were also not anxious to draft our women. I did not press my point." Close quote. An extra burden. Our founding leaders and Dr. Goh were honest and professional in their assessment. Building up the SAF with male conscripts alone was difficult. I quote from you Dr. Goh's words. "At that time, we were just beginning. SAFTI was just ongoing, probably producing the first or second output of NCOs and officer cadets. We had an acute shortage of training officers and commanders from NCO upwards, and there the thought of raising a huge NSF army just made us shrink from the responsibility." Close quote. We are used to the image of Singapore's founding fathers. In fact, behind the brave exterior of SAF pioneers laid doubts and insecurities. Enlisting women would have been an extra burden they did not want to take on. Today, of course, NS is well accepted, and the SAF functions well. So it's hard to imagine that Dr. Goh and the SAF pioneers could have felt overwhelmed. So much so that today I think we take NS for granted. But despite the enormous challenge that our founders had, they persisted, overcame, and we enjoy the fruits of their labors. In 1975, full-time national service could be extended to bring in NSS for the police force and as well as SCDF in 1981. NS has succeeded well enough in building a credible SAF with male conscripts, such that in 1983, when the topic of national service for women resurfaced, SAF's professional assessment then was that the SAF could cope with the manpower shortage through various efficiency and technological means. Indeed, this is the case today. Despite falling birth rates, the SAF has maintained operational readiness with reduced manpower through the same use of technology and optimizing resources. I have given many examples in this House of how this transformation has produced today's modern SAF that is more mechanized, motorized, lethal, and effective despite smaller numbers of soldiers. Having reached this position of strength, should we, for the sake of gender equality, now introduce national service for women? I think that is the question that some people have put forth. Some proposed this idea during the debate on the white paper, including to deploy these NS female conscripts as nurses or teachers. I think there are distinct pitfalls if conscription is implemented for any other reason than the critical need of military defense, whether it's for men or women. Compared to 1967, when we introduced national service, Singapore remains one of the few countries that NS is accepted, working well, and enjoys strong public support. And the main reason that we have this virtuous state of affairs is that we have kept the mission of national service clearly focused on the critical need for national defense. The primary reason for enlistment into the SAF must remain to train a soldier who is able to defend Singapore, to repel, if not defeat, an enemy who wants to invade our country. Likewise, enlistment into the police and SCDF must be based on the national need for homeland security and emergency services. This stark raison d'etre of national service to fight and defend our country and ensure its security is the foremost consideration that must undergird the mandatory enlistment of all national servicemen. It's very far off from the proposals to conscript women to serve in roles such as caregivers and healthcare workers, or to send a powerful signal of gender equality. These are inadequate justifications or reasons to mandate that someone must suspend individual liberties as a civilian, give up 2 years of his or her life, and if they do not, they go to jail, as our courts have sentenced NS defaulters. Further, the societal costs of enlisting women into national service now would far outweigh the benefits. Women will be delayed into their entry into the workforce. The immediate effect will be an accentuated decline in the size of our local workforce and a reduction of household incomes. Even if women are enlisted for non-military national service roles to augment our healthcare and social services, it may make manpower shortages in other industries worse. Over the long term, it will impose a great cost, not only on women themselves, but also on their families, children and spouses, and society as a whole. Is that cost justified to send a signal or to reverse stereotypes? From the government's perspective, no. I think most Singaporeans would say no too, from a security perspective. But if Singapore is ever threatened with an existential threat by an aggressor and have a sudden and great need to boost our military, I am certain that MINDEF and the SAF would call on the government of that day to enlist not only women, but even teenagers and older men into military service to defend and save Singapore. The Ukrainians did exactly this when their homeland was invaded. They required women employed in a wide range of professions aged between 18 to 60 years to register for possible military conscription. Young men and elderly who were well past their retirement age also volunteered to fight on the front lines to protect their country. In fact, I had a few emails from retired Singaporean males who offered to come back into the SAF. I'm not sure why. When Ukraine was invaded, I sent them a polite reply and said that we don't need you yet. There was even a report published in Reuters in February of this year of a 79-year-old Ukrainian woman who was filmed at a training ground handling a Kalashnikov assault rifle. But we are not there today and hope never to be. In considering national service for women, we should not inadvertently downplay or dismiss the already significant contributions that women do make in national defense and security by serving as regulars and volunteers. Member Polisan asked about the measures undertaken to expand the roles that regular servicewomen can serve in the SAF. Our regular servicewomen currently serve in vocations such as infantry, artillery, armor, combat engineers, pilot, and naval officers, among others. Today, we have more than 1,600 uniformed servicewomen in the SAF who make up about 8% of our regulars. In addition, more than 500 women have been trained and deployed as SAF volunteers in a variety of roles since 2015. Indeed, servicemen within the SAF hold their own and many punch above their weight. Progression to senior ranks for all personnel is based on merit, capability, and aptitude, as it is for all soldiers. Currently, women make up 5% of regulars holding senior ranks of Lieutenant Colonel, ME6 or Master Warrant Officer and above. We hope to see this figure increase as the proportion of servicewomen in the SAF continues to grow. We need to look no further than members in this House for good examples. Ms. Gan Xiao Huang and Ms. Poli San. As our first female brigade general in the SAF, Ms. Gan took command of the Air Power Generation Command, the largest formation in the RSAF. Ms. Po also started her career in the RSAF as a helicopter search and rescue pilot and was the flight commander of 125 Squadron. She was also the first female full-time aide-de-camp to the President, the late S.R. Nathan. Outside the SAF, women serve as regulars in the police and SCDF and contribute to our national defense and security. For example, other than serving in the SPF as a police inspector in the 1990s, Ms. Sylvia Lim was appointed as a member of the Advisory Council on Community Relations in Defense, ACCORD, from 2012 to 2020, where she maintained support for our national defense among the community and business groups. MP Po asked about the SAF's efforts to continue expanding the proportion of servicewomen in the SAF and those who hold senior leadership positions. We have stepped up our recruitment of women because the SAF wants more women to join our ranks and will make it more attractive for them to do so. For example, we facilitate flexible work arrangements, part-time job sharing, telecommunicating. Telecommunicating would be a different sort of skill, without compromising operational readiness. We've also implemented policies to help our servicemen and servicewomen take better care of their loved ones with childcare and parent care leave, and counseling service to support their well-being. Aside from career progression and opportunities in the workplace, the SAF has also taken proactive steps to improve recruitment and retention. It set up the SAF Women Outreach Office, SAF WOO, WOO, in July 2020. And this provides dedicated focus to review policies and create a conducive and progressive workplace experience for servicewomen. So let me summarize and conclude. Compulsory national service comes with significant cost on enlistees and the society, and can only be justified if it serves the critical need of national security and defense. This is the basis of the social compact and individual responsibility for national service, and those who do not comply are dealt with harshly. Historically, the SAF started with the conscription of males, it is able to defend Singapore today against potential aggressors and provide adequate deterrence. Likewise, the enlistment of males into the SPF and SCDF is sufficient for our homeland security needs. There is currently no need for us to enlist women for national service. We should not enlist women for national service to perform roles outside the SAF, SPF, or SCDF, even if that achieves some social good. The cost on women themselves, their families, and society does not justify enlisting women into national service for those reasons. Women are already contributing to nation building as regulars and volunteers. The SAF and Home Team welcome more women to pursue full-time careers or join their volunteer units. Thank you.